Joe Biden just doesn't get it. He's shown that in how he continues to go back to the well about how Republicans deep down still believe in bipartisan compromise. But every piece of evidence we have over the last 10 years and more shows that that's patently false. Biden just today made the argument in New Hampshire, which is of course one of the early primary voting states, that he feels Republicans, once Trump is gone, will go back to normal, quote unquote, and will be willing to compromise. And Democrats will need someone like him, a relative moderate, a guy who has a history of, going across the aisle, to capitalize on this new opportunity. And so this is a really interesting argument, but I just don't see any evidence for it. Biden knows firsthand, as Obama's vice president for 8 years, how obstructionist the Republicans have been. And that's before Trump came on the scene, and certainly before Trump was in power. I mean, we can look at Merrick Garland alone, how the Republican-dominated Senate wouldn't even allow a vote, even after Obama picked someone fairly moderate, who a lot of people could recognize as a fair choice to either political party. It didn't matter that Democrats compromised over and over and over again on so many issues to give, tokens here to moderates and conservatives to try to win bipartisan support. It did not matter. The Democrats lost the House and the Senate and the White House, and over those Obama years, they lost thousands of seats at the various jurisdictional levels. Because while they were compromising on their values, Republicans just went back to the well of obstruction and the stoking of fear and the mobilization of their base. And it's as simple as that. That's why Republicans kept winning. And it was only this recent midterm where the Democrats had any sort of momentum federally since Obama's 2008 election. So Biden's wrong here. He's wrong in saying that this is all because of Trump. He's saying, Trump's intimidating the average Republican lawmaker. And I know these guys, and they're good people, and they want to work with us, but they're afraid. And once Trump is gone, they will fall in line, and they will become bipartisan consensus makers, as they always were. And this is reflective of I think, Biden's political limitations and his dangers. This goes back to the fact that Biden feels it's not only possible, but good to compromise with Republicans like these, because his views don't differ all that much. Biden has very troubling views on race, on criminal justice, on economic equality, on what millennials need to succeed in this time. And he aligns with, not directly of course, but he aligns with Republicans a heck of a lot more than most of the other Democratic challengers. And so for him, it's okay to compromise with these people because they really don't fundamentally clash with his values. Biden doesn't see the dangers that this Republican Party, whether it's led by Trump or whether it's just a Republican, Congress dominated by people like Mitch McConnell, he doesn't see how dangerous this has been for poor people and GLBTQ people and racialized people and people of non-Christian backgrounds. He doesn't see that, or he chooses not to see it. Because Biden is, an old, wealthy, straight, white male. And the reality is that Joe Biden sees these guys as just like him. And so he can work with them. Even if, as we've seen from this Republican Party, even if we exclude Trump, a desire and a policy suite that works to overtly dehumanize major segments of the American population, to take away their rights, to take away their humanity, to take away their dignity. These people can't be worked with. They can't be compromised with. They shouldn't be, certainly. That's my view. I don't think they'd be willing to work with Joe Biden, if I'm being honest. But even if they were, I wouldn't want Joe Biden working with these, without hyperbole, monsters. They're just not worth compromising with. They need to be defeated. In every manner possible, as many Republicans need to be defeated as possible. And I'm not even a big cheerleader for the Democratic Party. I'm not. I'm not at all. But the reality is that the Republicans are a cartoonishly evil party. And there needs to be a recognition of that. And this even goes back further. Biden would often tell stories about how politics today just doesn't have the camaraderie and compromise that it once did. And he would tell these old stories about how he would debate segregationists in the House and Senate, and they would have these, knockdown, no holds bars fights. But after that, they would go have dinner together and chum about. And he saw that as a good thing. But it's not a good thing. I don't want to chum around with people that have supporters who chant, Jews will not replace us. I don't want to chum around with people that want to take away women's right to choose. I don't want to chum around with people that feel that people dying because they don't have health care is a natural order of things and a just order of things. These are not my chums. These are not my pals. And I don't want my elected officials chumming or palling around with these people. And it says a lot about Joe Biden that he feels that he can put aside so fundamental a series of issues and just be pals with them. And you know why that is? It's because Biden and these people are all part of that 1%. They're all part of that 1%. Their kids hung out together. Their kids go to private schools. Most of them attended elite universities. They are of a different sort of class. So they can argue about these things, but from Biden's perspective, they all have the same interests. They all go to the same parties. It's parties we're not invited to. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden and Mitch McConnell, they're invited to these parties. But we're not. And that's why Joe Biden, I feel, doesn't actually represent the interests of working and middle-class Americans, be they white or be they non-white. I think this is a mixture of things. On the one hand, I think this is a bit of political naivete from Joe Biden. I really feel he actually believes this. I really do. I feel that despite all the evidence to the contrary, evidence that he himself as vice president has experienced, he still thinks it's possible to work with Republicans and that it's the big bad old Trump that's preventing it. Even though, before Trump was president, Mitch McConnell blocked fundamental things like the right for the president's Supreme Court nominee to seek a vote, in front of the Senate. He also believes that, working with segregationists, working with people who denounce the fundamental human rights of racialized people is fine because at the end of the day, you can all have a shot of whiskey together after you play some golf. But I also think there's a bit of disingenuousness here. Biden believes this, he does, but he's also trying to sort of delegitimize the left of his own party, saying I'm the only reasonable one here, while Bernie and so many others are trying to stoke the fires of partisanship. I'm the only one that can fix this country. And the only way we can fix this country is through bipartisanship and compromise. And he's using this argument to try to justify his lane to the nomination and therefore to the presidency. But as I've said, and as many others have said, of course, too, there will be no compromise with Republicans because they will not compromise whether it's Biden or whether it's Bernie or whether it's Warren or whether it's Buttigieg or whether it's Beto O'Rourke. They will not compromise. Whether it's Kamala Harris, I could go on and on. They will not compromise. But the reality here is Biden is trying to build this narrative that only a mushy, centrist neoliberalism is the alternative to Trump. That there is no other path forward to defeat Trumpism. It's good old-fashioned neoliberalism that brought the economic elite, whether they were a red shirt or a blue shirt, together. That's brought them together since the 1980s to stomp on working people. Biden says we can get back to that normal, folks. Don't worry. I can be the guy to save us. But we're never going back to that. The economic crisis in 2008 is one of the reasons we're never going back to those times. The rise of Trump. Not that he's created a whole bunch of new stuff in the Republican Party, but that he's taken the mask off the Republican Party is a reason why we're never going back to that time. The rise of Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Elizabeth Warren to some degree, and exposing the real need for fundamental reforms is why we're never going back to that. And again, things like the climate catastrophe that's looming if we don't make changes now, and big changes, is another reason we're never going back to that time. The neoliberal center will not hold. Biden is an anachronism. Maybe he could have been president in the 80s if he didn't plagiarize that speech. But now's not Biden's time. He is not the man of this era. We need fundamental change, and he is either unwilling or unable, or both, to provide it. Vox, just yesterday, talked about Biden and his vision of Trump as an aberration. and saying that if we can defeat Trump in this election, we can go back to politics as usual. And I think he both believes that, but he also hopes for that. Biden is afraid that what Trump has exposed in the Republican Party and the broader conservative electorate will end the dream of elite-driven consensus politics as we know it. And he's worried that the biggest risk of Trump isn't actually who Trump is harming right now. Gay people, trans people, migrants, Muslims, poor people, whoever. But the biggest danger is that Trump has created space for real fundamental change in American politics through people like Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez and Warren and on and on and on. And he wants to try to break this down. By defeating Trump, he also defeats Bernie Sanders and people like him and the generation of young people who want major change. So people calling Joe Biden naive for saying that we can compromise with Republicans, I don't think you're wrong, but I also feel here this is a real tactical move for Biden. Because in trying to defeat Trump, he's really trying to defeat the actual antidote to Trump, which is, a strident left vision of American politics that puts workers and the environment and the marginalized above all. But that's not going to happen. Even if Trump is defeated, the right-wing populism that he helped to animate isn't going back into a box to be stowed away. Trump is not the problem. He's the symptom of the problem. And whether Joe Biden either fails to see that or doesn't want others to see that is why he is severely compromised and limited as a potential challenger to both Trump himself, but also the broader Republican ideology. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would really appreciate it if you liked, commented, and subscribed. Also, please consider supporting me on Patreon, which would help improve the frequency and quality of the content. Have a great one, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.